Welcome everybody to our first Anansi chat, one of the first that we'll be doing in a series that we'll be carrying on for the rest of the year. So we're hoping that lots of people will join us. Today we have an amazing panel of women, very influential, and I would say definitely beautiful, powerful, strong women sitting in front of us today, and aligning with International Women's Day. And for TAMS, International Women's Day is every day. But we wanted to showcase a panel of these lovely women that is going to share their stories and their career journey with you. I will introduce you to our host, the amazing Carmen Smith, who is the lead for the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion group in TAMS, and she leads the Race and Culture and will be hosting you today. For some housekeeping, if you'd like to ask any questions, please ensure that you put those questions through Q&A. And so without further ado, I will hand you over to the lovely Carmen.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. And I am so glad to have these wonderful ladies with us today. I'd like to introduce each of them, and I would like them to just give them a brief introduction of themselves and what they currently do before we continue with our conversation. First, I would like to introduce you to Valerie Ferguson. Valerie, would you introduce yourself and let us know your role there at Walt Disney?
Well, good afternoon and good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. This is important work in celebration of women all over the world. I am Director, Regional General Manager for our deluxe hotels at Walt Disney World. I've been in the business for about 40 years, having spent about 18 years with Hyatt Hotels, and followed by Loews Hotels, another 18 years, and Ritz-Carlton for about 5 years. All of that experience brought me to this very happy place where we actually have 22 hotels. They straddle different markets, so from limited service to luxury. And so I have our 10 luxury hotels. And I'm also responsible for opening a new hotel that will be available to surprise you all in 2022. So it's great to be here with you today, and it's great to be in Orlando.
Great, we're glad to have you. And Stephanie Hartsfield. Stephanie is a pilot, and I will let her tell you about herself and her role very briefly, and then we will continue. Stephanie, glad to have you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Carmen. And so to everyone in the audience, I am a pilot. I fly for American Airlines in the Miami International base. So I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I am, I guess, the legacy of Captain David Harris, who's my grandfather's first cousin. So he started the quote, "The flying's in our blood." I don't think I realized that until I was actually able to take a discovery flight. And then I was really actually hooked. And so I've been with American just a little bit over 4 years. The airplane that I fly is the Airbus 320, international destinations as well as domestic. Probably the longest distance we're going is into cities in Brazil, Colombia, Guyana, and mostly it's going to be Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico. And love to fly. I'm with an organization called Sisters of the Skies, which is how I'm connected to many of the Black women who fly commercially and professionally. That includes some military pilots for us as well. So I'm happy to join you today and looking forward to your questions.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. I am looking forward to getting into your background because in addition to that, without telling too much, Stephanie is a former Navy commander on aircraft, naval air pilot. So I'm excited to hear about that story. And last but not least, we have Miss Clara Carter. And Clara, would you please introduce yourself? She is calling in from sunny San Diego.
Yes, thanks so much, Carmen, for having me. I am a professional meeting and event planner. with more than 20 years in the business, self-taught entrepreneur. And my company, we market and promote San Diego and other destinations to our clients who are looking for the best rates. So we find them their hotels, source them, negotiate their contracts, and any other meeting service needs that they have. Again, I've been in this business for more than 20 years. And in this space in San Diego, we were lacking multicultural meetings and conventions. So this is the reason why I decided, let me start driving more diverse meetings into the city. And so with my entrepreneurial spirit, I launched this business, and then recently launched a new business, which is focusing on women, which is very appropriate for this month, women in tourism and hospitality. And we are coming up on our first conference, national conference, that's going to be held in San Diego, which is my beautiful backdrop here, September the 23rd through the 24th of this year. So we focus on all things diversity, inclusion for women, as well as mentorship, scholarships, and things of that nature. So I'm really, really excited about being part of this, and to tell you a little bit more about my story as we get further into the dialogue. So thank you so much again for having me.
Well, we have, that is a great segue, Clara, thank you. And by the way, September 23rd is my birthday, so I might take a sneak a trip out to San Diego and join you there. But I would like to know, yeah, I'd love to come because I love San Diego. But, as we talk about, can you just tell me, and you touched on it a little bit, Clara, when you were talking about the reasons why you started your organization, but tell me how being Black in America has prepared you for your current position.
Well, my Black experience, family, and community have prepared me for dealing with my future role as an entrepreneur woman. And I must say that as a young Black girl, my parents, who grew up in Louisiana before heading to beautiful sunny San Diego, they instilled some basic life principles in myself and my sister. And some of those principles were, one, that as long as you live, don't you forget where you came from. And I know many of you can identify with that. And then two, no one owes you anything. You must work harder than your white peers, as they are privileged and you are not. Okay, respect your elders and treat people the way that you want to be treated. And then the last one is, no one likes a liar. So tell the truth no matter what. So like most Black people, I've always had a great love for my community. And that's where we start to build our relationships and connections to leaders. And that's where I've cultivated my leadership and planning skills. And that's where I've learned to build tribes of trusted advocates that are necessary for any business to survive. So being Black has taught me lessons and equipped me as a leader. Well, let me just say the quiet thing out loud right now. Black people in America have always lived a pandemic, okay? Has always lived in a pandemic. We always have been wearing masks and using the right words, right? Asked to keep our social distance and clean up our acts, if you know what I mean. So my Black experience is what encourages me to continue creating my own path. What I've learned is you can't do it alone. Collaborative work makes the dream work. So that's what I've learned in being Black.
Thanks, Clara. Well, you said a mouthful for sure. And as everyone knows, this is the Breakthrough Diversity. So we will be having some conversations, very candid conversations about being Black, about, the ceilings that were put before us. And as Clara talked about, having to be better to be equal. And with that, I'm going to go to Stephanie. I don't know if some of you are on here know, but my company, ICF, is started by a Tuskegee Airman. His name was Clarence Lucky Lester. And I am so proud of that as, you know, from an aviation standpoint. Myself, I'm a former Pan Am flight attendant, so I have dated myself just now. So aviation has been in my blood as well. But I want to talk to Stephanie because I'm sure there's plenty of stories she can talk to us about being Black, but she's been at the Naval Academy, she's graduated from there. So even starting from that experience and even before. So Stephanie, if you could just talk to us a little bit about being Black and how that has influenced your current position now.
Thank you, Carmen. So I think there are a lot of things that I could share with you all about my experience and I think, double diversity that I present in the aviation career field. But one of the things that's important that I share is that my upbringing in the Atlanta area is a strong part of how I got a foundation in Black excellence, and knowing that I was going to be successful at whatever it was I decided and determined that I wanted to do or become. And so my very journey in aviation began with a discovery flight that was a part of a contest in my public high school. We were there on a Saturday doing a geography bee as part of the magnet program. And it just was completely serendipitous. But imagine the odds that that one flight lesson would land and find the one, Black female that might have that, that spark that came from that. And so it's just important for me to emphasize that being able to then switch to a magnet program that was at a predominantly Black high school, where the community of that high school was centered on Black excellence, and good grades were kind of like what the cool kids did. And it really definitely changed my perspective and my focus going forward. All the things that I could imagine for myself, I think were seemingly unlimited because of that community that is Atlanta. I mean, we had Black mayor, Black chief of police, fire marshal, all of the business sectors represented. I never thought that it was unique or out of the ordinary to have a Black dentist, a Black doctor, pediatrician. All of those things were resident and part of my community. So going to a Naval Academy experience put me in the extreme and abrupt notification that I was not like everybody else in my community there. And so I was one of 13 Black women who graduated in my class from the Naval Academy. All of that had its highs and lows, roller coasters. I think one of the things that dovetails with what Clara was saying is that our community within that school was very important. We networked through the gospel choir and the Midshipman Black Studies Club, and those things were very instrumental in making sure that I had the support and the mentorship and the outreach to get up and out of bed every morning to continue in that space, because there were a lot of aggressions against me as a woman and as a Black woman, and there were some that were microaggressions that still surprise me and spring up to this day, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this was happening. But there were just multi-scale levels of kind of intimidation and harassment, to be quite honest. And that it's really coming to light, particularly when we talk about the military and the changes that are afoot there. Fast forward to many years later, and my aviation career in the Navy was a very kind of short-lived event. So I stayed into the Navy. When I graduated from the Naval Academy, I was wearing glasses, so I couldn't go to their pilot program. I did what I thought was the next best thing in their navigator program. So the Navy's called Naval Flight Officers. So it's a similar training pipeline, about 2 years from beginning to end. And I had completed all of that training, and I get to what they call a familiarization flight in that very last week of our last level of school. And I had an instructor who was determined to find a way to get rid of me. And he found something and ran with it. And it was just so aggressive. It was like, hey, I know that this flight's been canceled for weather and you don't have to have it to continue, but you did something that I find unsatisfactory and this is the result. And I'm not lowering my standards for you. And those were his words. If I lower my standards for you, I'll have to lower my standards for everyone, and I'm not going to do that. That was really the last time that I ever found myself in that type of situation where somebody thought that they were lowering their standards for my success. Because from that point forward, and what I like about aviation is it's not as subjective as they would have liked for it to be. You're either on airspeed, on altitude, on heading, or you're not. And so if you give that demonstration of that capability, they're going to have a much harder time trying to make a case for your inability or your lack of competence. And so with that being said, it's been a simultaneous journey. I've continued in the Navy Reserve as a supply corps officer, business and logistics, and then continue to pursue my love of aviation through general aviation channels. And again, long story short, it got me to American Airlines, which I had never imagined was possible for me, just because there had been so many military pilots hired there. And it was just kind of like, this is the route you must take in order to get to American. So I think that that is a dream come true, because that is where Captain Harris, who was the first Black pilot hired at American Airlines, basically changed history for that company and for the industry. And I didn't even recognize that legacy for what it was at the time until I was actually there. So yeah, being able to pay it forward and give back to the people that have helped me get to where I am is how I am in this space today. I want to make sure that the pitfalls and obstacles that I've had to overcome are not still in place when we look at this same question, maybe 10 years from now. Shoot, maybe 1 year from now.
Well, it's interesting, some of the journey. And just let me say to those who are on here, just in terms of Black life, particularly Southern Black life, because I want to talk about that. You hear about HBCU schools, historically Black colleges and universities. What folks, a lot of don't know that there are Black banks, Black insurance companies. My father is from North Carolina. He was raised in the South, had to go to the North to play football if he wanted to play, because he wasn't allowed to play at the white schools there. But, Stephanie brings some really important points. And so in the South, Blacks were forced to have their own. So with segregation, they were forced to have their own, but it created an excellence in us. You hear about Black Wall Street. You hear about some of the other stories where Blacks were very, very successful in finances, in medicine, and you hear the hidden figures. So it's not just now, but also you hear about some of the challenges. Stephanie talked about, having an instructor who went out of his way to make things difficult. Well, remember the Tuskegee Airmen. If you ever seen any of those movies, they talked about how they would change the report time so that they were late and made it look like they were incompetent. And these were just tactics or microaggressions or just overt aggressions. And so those are some of the conversations that we want to have, that we do have in this panel. But you're looking at World War II to the present day. And so many of you on here are women. You also know those ceilings, and we're going to talk to Valerie in just a second, because not only is she a woman, but she is also the pioneer of first in the hotel and hospitality industry. But I want you, as you're listening to these ladies, consider some of the challenges and the things that they've had to go through, but not only as Black women, but as females, because we know as a general thread, we're females, but then the statistics even widen when you're a woman of color. So Valerie, let's talk to you about being Black in your current position, but talk a little bit too about your journey and your first, because Valerie actually was the first Black general manager, if I'm correct, in the hotel industry, period. So let's talk about that.
Well, the career finds you, you don't find it. That's the one thing that I discovered. I grew up in San Francisco, graduated from college there, University of San Francisco, and moved to Atlanta to actually go to law school. And when I got to Atlanta, I I was first amazed because I had never been in a city that was so Black. And I saw myself everywhere. So I was just excited. The year I moved to Atlanta was the year that Maynard Jackson became mayor of that city, and he was the first Black mayor. So to see the how people thrived there and how Black business thrived there, I was absolutely blown away. At the same time, I was in a little bit of shock because I couldn't understand what anybody was saying and everything was fried. So I was coming from California where you ate really off of the land and you had wine country and you had, the ocean. And the first thing I'm like, well, when are we going to the beach? Did you not look at a map? This is an inland state. So I decided I really needed to just save some money because I was off the gravy train and move back, get a job, move back to California. And so I took a job at the Hyatt Regency Atlanta as a night audit clerk. And in my mind, I knew that I only needed this job for 3 months. I just needed to, get some cash, move back, and I'll finish my graduate degree, become a rich and famous lawyer. That was the plan. And I ended up working this midnight shift, this third shift, and loving it. I was in control. Here I was in an industry that I knew was fraught with Jim Crow. It still was then. But it just grabbed me, and it grabbed me in such a profound way that, that 3 months turned into 6 months and 6 months turned into a year. And all of a sudden, I was being looked at as someone that maybe we could develop this woman. And, I didn't know the industry well enough to know where my sights could end, but I knew one thing. The general manager of that hotel lived in the hotel, and he had a limo and a limo driver. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I think I might want to do this. And so I started to set my sights to that, but didn't know how to get there. Because what happens is we work hard. We work really hard because, as Clara said, our parents told us, you have to be twice as good. There's a list, and you better check off every box on that list and some to be recognized. So with that, while that is a fact, the reality is sometimes you can focus so much on the list and so much on being perfect that you miss the opportunity when it comes knocking. I fortunately had somebody that took an interest in me and really started to mentor me. Good, bad, and indifferent. He did everything. He was positive. He was constructive. Val, you're not in San Francisco anymore. Stop wearing gauze. You look like a hippie every day. He sat me down. He taught me how to financially understand and manage a P&L. He taught me the business of the business, as well as, these are the things that you look for in people that work for you and with you on a daily basis. He ended up guiding my career, and, I was supposed to be moving. I lived in about 5 different cities with Hyatt at the time, and I was supposed to be moving to Australia, working for Hyatt International, opening a property there, when I got a call 2 weeks before I was to leave saying, well, we really want to promote you to become general manager of this hotel. This was in 1985. And this was a small Hyatt hotel that was actually owned by McDonald's Corporation in Oak Brook, Illinois, on their office campus, right next to Hamburger University, and which was a beautiful site, beautiful 157 room hotel. It was the first time they had ever really owned something like this. And so the chairman was a guy by the name of Fred Turner, who was chairman of McDonald's Corporation. And he was going to be sort of the asset manager because it was so new. I wanted to handle this personally. I was working with him. I learned a tremendous amount from him, but the one pivotal lesson I learned is, don't judge people by what you see, judge people by what they do. He sat me down one day. I had been there about 6 months and said, I just want to let you know, I think you're doing a great job. But I almost severed our contract because when your boss called me, the first thing he says is, I have a great candidate for you, but she's Black and she's a woman. And his response was, is she qualified? And he said, yes. And he said, okay, never ever call me like that again. I will, what are you saying? What does that say about me? And he thought it was important that I know that. And in 1985, that was a pretty shocking conversation that, that a white male would have with a Black woman, let alone present himself at that point as such an ally. And through the years, I got to understand why. And that was because his son-in-law was Black, his grandchildren were Black. And, he felt that. And this was a man that started with Ray Kroc at very humble beginnings and certainly knew the entire schism of racism from a 360-degree lens. I had the benefit of working with some really strong people throughout my career. But the one thing that I had to deal with was just blatant racism from guests, from clients, as well as from executives in the various companies that I worked for. What that did for me is when you ask the question, what does being Black in this industry mean? I can think of only one word. It teaches you resilience. In every way, we deal with discomfort. It is not comfortable having to disarm people from the first time they meet you because they have an assumption of what's going to come out of your mouth. How are you going to behave? Are you the angry Black woman? Are you crazy? What? They have all these stereotypes. You have exactly 3 seconds to let them know who you are. And then you got to keep pushing because there's always somebody around the table they're just not comfortable with that. There's this one person that doesn't sound like me or look like me. They will have a tendency to overspeak you. And what I have learned through the years is that your point of view matters. And no matter how you got there, you've got to make sure they know that you're there. So, I love this business. I think I have been extremely blessed that I've had great people to support me, great allies, great mentors, great sponsors. I'm really proud of the fact that I've been able to help others that look like me move up in this industry, but this industry is still very fraught with institutionalized racism. We probably, out of 88,000 hotels in the United States, have less than 75 Black general managers. Yet, when you look at the base of our industry, it's filled with people of color. We probably have less than 500 women. There aren't that many women executives. A few years back when I was with Ritz-Carlton, I traded hotels in London. The Athenaeum, I managed that hotel for a month. The manager there happened to be a woman. She managed my hotel for a month. And it was such a surprise to everyone that, I got this big article in the Financial Times. Like, who would ever think, I would be in the Financial Times. But it was remarkable in a country that I thought was always led by women that this was such a surprise. It's not good being first. It's better being the 99th. It's better being the 150th. It's better being the 200th. We need to see a mass. Being the first is certainly nice we've all had a door to knock down, but you got to knock down a wall to make sure there are so many others coming behind you. Because we can't continue to operate businesses without our point of view, without our perspective. Businesses flourish under Black women. Businesses flourish under diverse populations.
Thank you, Valerie. I mean, that was a conversation in and of itself. And you brought, again, so many points. And you know, for the industry that we have, travel, you know, it's an industry that you see so many people, so many cultures, so many, you know, and you would think that this industry in and of itself would be the most open, you know, and the most welcoming to people of all diverse backgrounds. But as Valerie has stated, and you know, as Stephanie and Clara stated, their different journeys have come out of the fact that we have been discounted. I owned an agency back in the day where I started that agency because someone wouldn't give me a job because they said I didn't go to travel school and I didn't do this. And I'm thinking, I've been around the world. I've been on certain streets. I can tell you where to go or at the Champs-Élysées and what restaurant to eat. And I speak multiple languages. So what do you mean I can't be a travel agent? So I started my own. And so that's what you see in many of these cases is we've created our own paths. And so for those who are in positions, I heard ally. We're going to have a conversation about allies at some point in the future, because allies are necessary. You need someone to carry you along. You need someone that can open the door. Listen, I hope Susan Lichtenstein is on here, but I'm going to tell you, TAMS and the things, I wouldn't have this platform if it wasn't for allies. If it wasn't for someone with a vision to say, hey, we want to make a splash in this industry. And you have to have people that can support that. Even having this conversation without allies, Joe's on here, Jill's on here. You know, we have folks in this industry that are really want to hear what's being said, want to have those conversations, whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable. And for those of you who are in hiring positions, consider the person based on based on their whether they're qualified or not on their color of the skin, not on the look. Because that's I temped in HR at one point, and they would look at a resume and determine, okay, and they would throw it in the trash. You know, and so this stuff does go along. It's one reason that when I'm applying for something, I never put my race and I never put my gender on there, because you have folks still in hiring places that will discount you just based on those types of things. So thank you, Valerie, for opening those doors and enlightening us and just talking to us about that. And I want to pivot a little bit, still staying on that subject, but Stephanie, I want to talk to you because you brought something, and it actually has to do with my next question about how racism was pivotal in your career, or how it made that pivotal point. And you talked about the instructor that you had that was determined to get rid of you. Can you talk about that moment in time, what your thoughts were, and what compelled you to continue on or to shift to look at a different way of looking at it versus, you know, the path that you thought you were going to be on?
Hi, I'm sorry about that. I had a knock at the door. So I like that question because what I have experienced was what I call breakdown for a breakthrough. And I use my, I use Bible. If the door is closed, the window is open. God is always going to give us that next step forward. We may not see it at the time. So when I think back to that time, it was 1997, shortly after combat exclusion had been lifted in the military for women. And so I was on my way to an aircraft carrier-based aircraft platform is what they call it. And I was in a space where there were no Black women. And so I was easily recognizable, and I had allies, and I also had people who were very overtly against what I was doing. And I was in, unfortunately, a subjective area because everything was based on instructor evaluation. So I said all of that to say the conditions were ripe for that influence where someone has bias, it's going to play out. They may not even realize it. They may not take the time to understand their perspective and how it's influencing them. It's just happening, you know, and I'll get my evaluation or grading, know that I had done an excellent job because I could see what my peers were doing in their training as well, because we're paired and flying together. And I would end up with these average scores, and it was like, you know, student lacks confidence, buzzword for a woman. That's how we let the next guy know this is where she's headed and how we're going to marginalize her. And it was the kind of thing where it had gotten so deep into my record, my training record, many, many months had gone on without me even knowing that this case is being built against me. So when I get to this point and I have this person who's trying to tell me that I'm not qualified, even though I've completed the training that was required, I was frustrated. And I had a choice. I could either fight this and continue and try to come back and get those wings to be the navigator, or I could take the training that I had gotten, owe the Navy no additional commitment, and go ahead and do what I really wanted to do, which was to become a pilot. And it didn't have to be with the Navy. In fact, I can remember telling the Commodore of that training, I guess, training squadron, I'm going to be a pilot. It's just unfortunate that the Navy will not be a part of that. And I went on and did my thing. Within the month, I was back in Atlanta doing hometown recruiting, back with the flight instructor that I had met when I was in high school, a program called Aviation Career Enrichment, a guy named Julius Alexander, who has godfathered so many pilots coming out of Atlanta. It's just like, you know, you can't touch this person who was chosen for this. And so I didn't hold on to the negativity that was there. It just galvanized me to get to where I was going and made me more resolved to get to that point, more determined to continue. And so that door closed, but the window opened, and it just kept going from there. I came back and volunteered with ACE, Aviation Career Enrichment in Atlanta. I've joined the Organization of Black Airline Pilots, now called Aerospace Professionals. So we've broadened that outreach in that organization. And then Sisters of the Skies, which I'm probably going to emphasize as much as possible. We are a 501c that has a mission of scholarship, mentorship, and outreach so that we can increase our sisterhood. And we're creating pathways so that we're not this tiny, tiny percentage of the aviation community, and making changes in how people perceive us in the workforce. I mean, you know, it's still going to be time, but every time I've stepped foot in the airport, I'm changing perspectives. I'm changing people's point of view. And so I hope I answered your question. I feel like I got rambled.
No, this is
outside of it.
This is awesome because, you know, it's real important for this. And, you know, and so anybody that's traveling on American Airlines, listen for Stephanie, depending on where you're going, because, and you can say, hey, I was on that call and I listened to you. I'm going to pivot, and then we are running out of time a little bit. But I do want to make sure we have some time for questions. This is going to have to have an encore conversation because there's much that we can talk about here. But we're talking about racism, and I know, Clara, this is going to be pointed to you. You know, you started your organization because of, let's talk about contracts and let's talk about opportunities for just people of color in the meeting space. Now, I want to just give a little shout out because with Clara, I actually met her. There was another guest that I was going to have, and she was actually the CEO of the San Diego Convention Center. But she's been out of travel for a long time, and she brought Clara to my attention. And the whole purpose also of this call and of this webinar is I like to look for those unsung heroes. So the reason you may not have heard of some of these ladies is because no one has highlighted them, or maybe they've done it in a manner where it's just not broadly based. And so I'm always looking for those unsung heroes. And truly, we have a gem here today. But Clara, I want to talk about how racism and the lack of opportunity caused you or promoted you or compelled you to create your own company and industry and the things that you're doing in the San Diego area. And then if there are any questions, we'll either wait for those questions afterwards, or we'll continue on with our conversation until time's up.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. And just like Valerie and Stephanie, I think we all have a lot of commonality, because first and foremost, we're Black. And as Valerie mentioned, anytime that you do something for the first time, oh my goodness, all right, you are so challenged. And so with me starting this company that I did, of course, Clara Wallace, as Carmen stated, she was a mentor to me, and as so many others, but she was a mentor to me because she was already at the forefront. And when I, started this, I was, of course, lots of racism, lots of challenges that I endured. And one of them that I really want to talk about is that one opportunity that I was so super excited about, right? It was like, this is the biggest thing ever in my career as an entrepreneur, as a self-made entrepreneur. I didn't have a roadmap, okay, to show me that this is what I'm supposed to do or how I'm supposed to do. Unlike Valerie, I did not start in the hotel industry. I came from corporate America, decided after 22 years, I didn't want to be there anymore. So I just kind of jumped ship and made my own way, as you will. I mean, I consider myself as a serial entrepreneur, and those that know me know that I have done some things, right? So as a serial entrepreneur, and then all of a sudden I decided, you know what? I heard about this meeting and event planning, and I attended a conference. That was held in Kansas. I'll never forget it to this day. And it was with the Coalition of Black Meeting Planners. And I know, Valerie, you know about this organization. You're a member, and I was a longtime member of that organization as well. So in that meeting, this is what really propelled me, because again, unlike the two of you, Valerie and Stephanie, San Diego is not that that Black city, if you will, right? But this is my city. This is where I grew up. And as I mentioned before, you will always be a Black woman, and don't you forget where you came from, okay? Those things resonate in my head, but you will always you have to set the example. So I remember when I got so excited about this opportunity, as I started saying, it was about creating a program for the city of San Diego. And it was about driving more diverse meetings into the city. So when I went to that conference in Kansas, I listened to this man who was Roy J. And I'm sure, Valerie, you probably know who Roy is, okay, out of Portland. He made such an impression on me in that moment. And he challenged everyone in that room while he was presenting that if you don't have a multicultural something in your respective city, shame on you, is what he said, right? So I started thinking like, wow, well, San Diego definitely don't have a multicultural anything, right? As far as tourism is concerned. And then I said, but I have no idea how to make this thing happen, but I'm sure up for the challenge, right? And so I recall after, I didn't know him at all. I recall after that, I made the bold move and I just went to this man and I said, you know what? That resonated with me and I'm up for the challenge. Will you help me to get this started? In San Diego? He said, I will surely help you get this started. So I was like, yes. So I had all of what I needed, right? I had backup support outside of San Diego and I was ready to come to San Diego and do this thing. So they had this tourism marketing funds. Carol told me about these funds, right? And she said, Clara, there's this money out there and it's for you. It has your name on it, right? And I said, really? So fast forwarding, I applied for that money. I was the only Black woman out of 35 presenters that went in to apply for this money. You had to do a presentation, get approved and all this good stuff. Well, I had passed the approval point, right? So now I'm in front, excuse me, giving this presentation to a board of 15 white men whom I didn't know them. They didn't know me, but it didn't matter to me because I knew that I had a program and that the bottom line is that I'm getting ready to increase revenue for the city of San Diego. And you should be happy for that because it's all about putting heads in beds, right? And so I said, I can do that. I could do that. And so I went out and I did this presentation, and I'm telling you, without a question, this is where I experienced race and discrimination that was directed straight at me. They didn't care nothing about who I was. And so little did I know that I would become the token at this moment, at this time, okay? Because it was something that I was doing that was going to be bigger than they could ever conceive because they didn't know me. And it was like, they said these things to me. Who is this woman? You know, why should we fund her program? Okay, how do we know that she can even deliver on her promise? You know, I heard them saying these things, and I'm standing there in front of them, talking directly to me. And when I tell you I had to grin and bear it, it was like the hardest thing. You know how you get so mad and tears about to come out your eyes. You're like, you better not, okay? You better suck it up. So that, you know, at that moment is when I got my resilience, right? And my perseverance. I said, you know, it all kicked in. And I said to myself, their low expectations don't define you, Clara, okay? And you can show them better than you can tell them. So quitting was not an option, right? So it was like, that gave me everything that I needed to say, you're going to do this, right? So I refused to back down. I stood my ground. I knew that what I was presenting to them was what they had asked me to. It was a brand new program, so they didn't have everything worked out, right? But I knew that I was following it word for word as we have to do. Right? So I'm like, you know what? You can't change the rules of this game right now because you already done put it in right and I'm getting ready to run with this, right? So I did that. And so as a result of all of that, for 3 consecutive years, I got funded for this program, right? That I created and generated more than $5 million for the city of San Diego by myself in this space, right? And so like I told them, I can show you better than I can tell you. And that's what I did. And from that, I gained all of the respect from all of those white men around that table. They didn't have to like me, but they had to respect me, because I was delivering on the promise, right? So then I looked at it and I said, oh my goodness, okay, my city now has become the destination of choice for diverse conferences and leisure travel groups because I was resilient and did not back down. So that's my story of how I got over. And as a matter of fact, one of those white men that was around that table became one of my strong allies, and to today still is. And he said, because of your resilience and how you stood up to all those white men, and he's a white man too. He said, I like this woman, okay? I want to help her. So he's on my board right now.
That's amazing. That's, you know, these are the stories, and that's my sister's favorite saying too, Clara. I can show you better than I can tell you. So, you know, and it's true. And I think all of the women and all of the folks on this call, you know, we've all had to say that. I can show you better than I can tell you, because, you know, they don't see past the messenger. They don't see past the package, not realizing that you have the keys to the kingdom in your hands, but because they can't get past who you are, sometimes it falls to deaf ears, and it doesn't happen. But we are so thankful for you ladies. I know there's a couple questions. I think, Linda, I'm going to turn it over to you. I do, before we run out of time, specifically want to thank Valerie, Clara, and Stephanie for just taking the time. I'm telling you, we're going to have an encore because there's so much more that we need to talk about. But I know for lack of time, you know, we need to move forward. But Linda, I'm going to put this in your hands. If there are any questions, let us know, and then I'll leave it to you to wrap it up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh my God, ladies, I think this could go on forever, but thank you so much. We do have one question, which is, with all your experiences overcoming racism, do you see Black females coming in the still coming into the business of travel? So I think I'll probably ask you first, Valerie. Yeah, we've got 9 minutes, so we should be okay.
Absolutely. You know, I'll tell you a great story real quick. There is a young lady that was on my team in Atlanta. I ended up returning to Atlanta as the general manager of the Hyatt Regency Atlanta, that hotel I started at. Love Atlanta. She was on my team as a management trainee. That was about 20 odd years ago. And just last week, she was on the cover of one of our hospitality trade magazines as the youngest African-American woman to own 3 hotels. And 2 of those hotels will be managed by Hyatt, and 1 of those hotels will be managed by Hilton. This is big news. It has been all over the blogs. There's so much that's going on right now, and she was in the right place at the right time. She did the hard work, she prepared, but she told me 20 years ago that she didn't want to just become a general manager. She said, I want to be an owner, which is it's much bigger than being, you know, the general manager of a company that's managing somebody else's asset. And today she owns 3 hotels. So I can't be more proud. There are a number of Black-owned hotels and companies that are coming to the forefront. We need to know who they are, and we need to support them.
Excellent, thank you. Next, Stephanie.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Sorry, it said, with all your experiences overcoming racism, do you see Black females still coming into the business travel world?
So in taking it from my point of view, look, I'm thinking of the modification to that question about Black women becoming pilots. And what we are seeing is a definite move of the needle. And I'm observing this through my work with Sisters of the Sky. So just imagine that we've estimated about 100, just over 100 Black women who are working in commercial airline jobs right now. As this mentorship program is happening, we're seeing women who will come into the mentorship program that we do annually. And then within that year's time, they will matriculate to the pilot licenses that allow them to then become members of the organization, and then turn around and become mentors themselves. So our group has grown at about 60% over the last year. COVID actually, I think, was a time where a lot of the mentees were able to kind of take out the distractions and focus on their training, and have gotten a lot of flying done in this last year, even despite the pandemic being in place. But I think back to Clara saying we've always been in a pandemic, so we just had to modify and update our operations to coexist with what has already been happening. So that is the answer is yes. It's a small movement. We're still less than 1% of the professional pilots. Huge milestones are still happening. Firsts are still happening as we continue to progress forward. But I'm also seeing a lot more support coming from the private sector that are looking for pathways to help support and galvanize our efforts. And we've had people reaching out to the organization, for outreach, to talk about.
Oh, I think we might have lost Stephanie a little bit.
Partnered with us. I'm sorry, I'm going too long.
No,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, so but Boeing donated directly $50,000 to one young lady in her training, and $10,000 to the organization to help another scholarship winner. Perfect. So we're going on goal to have 100,000 in scholarship awarded to honor Bessie Coleman's 100-year anniversary of becoming a pilot in America.
Perfect, thank you.
The first
Last
Black
but-
pilot.
Good, excellent. Last but not least, Clara, just before I wrap up quickly, do you still think that, you know, Black women should enter the travel world?
Most definitely. I see this industry, as Valerie stated, I love this industry of hospitality and tourism, and many people don't really realize how big this industry really is. They just think of hotels and things of that nature, but we're a huge industry, and most of you know, all of the jobs, you know, and the revenue, as I mentioned earlier, that goes to operate cities. And this is throughout the world, you know, hospitality and tourism, as far as the revenue from the visitors alone. But yes, that's one of the reasons why we're expanding my organization. Over COVID, I started a nonprofit, my nonprofit arm, to do just that, to increase diversity, equity, inclusion, to bring in more women of color, even though we have a small percentage here in San Diego of less than 6% Blacks in the city. But what I do see is there's a lot of Blacks, as was mentioned earlier, that are in the industry, but just need to be groomed and need to, you know that they have support and allies in this space to help them. So for me, it's about utilizing my resources, my connections, since now I've started an organization with all of the C-suite women in tourism and hospitality in San Diego. So I plan to leverage them in this nonprofit organization, continue to provide scholarships for women, you know, to continue on in this space. And so that they just know that there is a place for them, that they can come and, you know, we can talk, we can have training, we can have mentorship and all of those great things. So I think it's all about just providing opportunities to people and educating people about what is available out there for them. So I'm excited about the next step. And so looking forward to, you know, see what 2021 and 2022 is going to bring.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I have to say, this is, I think Carol is saying something, but she's on mute. She's on mute.
I was going to say, before you wrap up, Linda, can I just say, ladies, wow. When I said strong, powerful, beautiful women, absolutely. How the hell are we going to beat this one? Over to you, Linda.
No, thank you. I have to say, you know, listening to each and every one of you, it's just so inspiring. And, you know, one thing that we always say is that, you know, people need to see to be. And I think just listening to all of your stories, you know, any person or any young person that's out there and just looks at you and just says, I can definitely get there. I think for me, myself, you know, it's just, yeah, it's just, oh God, I just have goosebumps. But I want to thank each and every one of you for your time. We really appreciate it. And for making this our first Anansi story time. So definitely thank you very much, ladies.
And thank you also, Carmen, for leading us on this. I mean, amazing host. And thank you. Thank you, all of you. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all. Thank you for having
everybody. Thank
Great.
you.